Greetings, Vaxxports. Hope you're doing well today. We have an interesting show with not one, but two very special guests for some really cool conversation on a lot of different topics. Here we go. He has a plan, she has a plan, and you get to pay for it regardless.
The best way to get someone motivated is to stand for something strongly, deeply, passionately.
Subscribe to Disenthrall. Do as you're told.
All right, guys. The first special guest is the Christian from the Liberty After Dark. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, Patrick. Thanks for having me today.
I'm excited to have you back. It's always good conversation. Oh, wait, there's more. What's up, Shepard? How are you doing?
Thanks for having me on, Patrick. I'm great today.
Awesome. So really quickly, Liberty After Dark is from the Liberty. I just called you by your show's name. Christian runs the show Liberty After Dark, and I pointed to the wrong person. Christian runs the show Liberty After Dark. Go check him out. Shepard, the voluntarist, runs the Shepard, the voluntarist YouTube channel and Odysee. Well, we shouldn't call it YouTube channel anymore. It's like Kleenex. We say YouTube when we just mean video platform. Anyway, all right. So before we get started, I want to really quickly pimp our newest shirt that we've added to our store. It is the Printing Will Continue Until Freedom Improves. For those of you that are enjoying 3D printing, a little bit of freedom where you are from. There's stickers for your cars. There's all kinds of fun stuff for that one. You know, printing might just continue anyway after that. But yeah. So then the last thing I wanted to mention is we released a video earlier today. Let me bounce back down here so you can see it. Ross Ulbricht. For the first time ever, I got to hear his voice. And it was a 25-minute recording of him speaking at the Bitcoin 2021 conference on the phone from inside the federal penitentiary. This guy, and I've talked about him at length on this channel before. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This guy could have been me. I could have been this guy. I am an IT nerd. I'm into cryptocurrency. I know how to create the technology that was behind the Silk Road. I could have done it. Had I been in that time, in that place, in that headspace, I might be the one in prison right now instead of him. And so hearing him speak and putting myself in his shoes was really sort of powerful for me. It's a good talk. It's 25 minutes long. He goes through some stuff. I would definitely recommend this video. It's that special that I wanted to give a video shout out from this channel that I published today. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. You can find all of our platforms at disenthrall.me/platforms. And you can find our t-shirts on disenthrall.me/swag. Okay, enough of that pimping swag. All right, guys. So I'm hoping to start having more weekly shows that bring in some of my favorite people in the world of voluntarists, and this is kind of one of the first ones of those that we've done. And I'm happy to have two of you instead of just one. So I'm really looking forward to this. But the reason why there's two of you instead of just one this week is because Shepard asked sort of our group to check out a video by Larkin Rose that was called
Conflict Equilibrium.
Thank you. Yeah, so I listened to it. Christian listened to it. I had some short thoughts and Christian had some strong feelings, and I thought it would be fun to sort of talk through it. And that was not meant as an insult, Christian. But
I had thoughts and he had feelings.
Yeah. Thoughts and feelings. Yeah. So, Shepard, if you could tell us what conflict equilibrium is. What is that all about?
Well, Larkin Rose mentioned this idea on one of his podcasts, Snarkin' with Larkin, some years ago, and it just stuck with me. So I've listened to it a bunch of times since then. And essentially, his noticing of human way humans are, this thing social, is that there's this conflict will arise, and then it'll work itself out. And basically, the idea is that doesn't need to be a government, or even though a government currently exists, it doesn't really matter, because between neighbors, this is kind of the way that things seem to work themselves out. And long story short, if a person does something that everybody around them goes, wow, that's really uncool, then probably an individual or a group of individuals will get together and say, hey, neighbor, knock it off. And if they feel strongly enough about it, then they'll get really serious and maybe take what we, today in the United States, the police would take the action, or the judicial system, the jails. And Larkin's point was, it just kind of seems that human beings will take action and solve problems. Now, if it's not a serious enough action, if it's just I guess it would be an infraction, then probably neighbors aren't going to care enough to do anything about it. And it'll just kind of go away, and everybody will say, yeah, there's that jerk that flips people off. Somebody flips, you're driving by your neighbor's house and he flips you off, you're not going to go in there and kill him. But if, on the other hand, you're driving by your neighbor's house and he comes out and throws a gallon of gasoline that he lights on fire onto your car, okay, maybe tomorrow when you're coming home and he's walking out there with a gallon of gasoline, maybe a handful of neighbors are going to come out and try to stop him in some way. And so it just kind of is going to work itself out. If he had brought that gallon of gasoline Molotov cocktail out, and it was because you flipped him off, and that was his response, then everyone in the community would say that is not an equal response, and that ain't cool. And so he essentially says it will all work itself out. And you guys have both listened to it more recently than me, so please correct me if I got that wrong.
Well, before I toss it to Christian, I will say that I remember a previous video that Larkin had done that was also really good, but it kind of approached the same sort of idea from a different angle. And it said, so everybody's always asking us voluntarist types, well, how will this be handled in a free society? How will that be handled in a free society? How will you handle violent criminals? How, blah, blah, blah. How will you do this? How will you do that? And his challenge to those people is, well, how would you handle it? Like, what would you do, specifically you? Because that's not how people are used to thinking. They're used to thinking in terms of the collectives and the we's, not in terms of, oh, well, there's a guy that's beating his wife. He lives 2 houses down from me. What am I going to do about that? Am I going to take personal responsibility to that? I'm going to run the cost benefit, the risk analysis to my own safety and to that of my family and my social status and whatever. What am I going to do? And running yourself through that equation to sort of think through, well, I could go over there and just shoot him. But, what would that be the correct response? Would that be proportionate? Because when you're the one doing it, you're the one bearing the cost of your actions, unlike when we just expect the government people to do it for us. They pay for the cost of, your wishes, right? It's the moral hazard of government, yet again. So that's kind of related to what you're talking about, where humans, even if they're in the right, they will often shy away from conflict. Especially dangerous conflict. Even if they have the right to defend themselves with a high level of violence, justified violence, they will hold themselves back for many reasons. One, they just feel subjectively like it would be wrong to use whatever maximal amount of violence that you could logically, rationally justify, maybe. 2, socially, even though you could rationally justify it logically, socially it might land you in a bad place if you went too far, quote unquote too far, right? So people take this stuff into account all the time in how they act, and there's nothing wrong with that. And when I was listening to Larkin's video describing this conflict equilibrium idea, I was, as I usually do when I listen to this stuff, I was looking for red flags. And, one of the red flags was Larkin saying, one of the red flags I was looking for that I didn't see was Larkin saying that people should behave like this, which is not what he was saying. He was saying people do behave like this. I'm describing reality, not prescribing reality. So those are my thoughts. And I think I think that was the extent of my thoughts, and then kind of Christian took it and ran with it from there. So I would like to have that conversation that you guys had, maybe again here in person. So Christian, what do you think?
Yeah, so without going too far, it's easy for this to come up as if it's as an argument of semantics, really, which I want to preface a little bit by saying, really what we're going to be discussing is ethical permissibility. And permissibility in philosophy has a lot of different connotations depending on when you're using it and how you're using it. But ethical permissibility is essentially, you could consider it a concept that gives a certain flexibility to an otherwise rigid system. So in the case of the conflict equilibrium, let's say someone does something that's not worthy of force used against them. Someone uses force against them. Well, that's obviously an aggression, but the people who would enact on that aggression to in some way derive it of restitution or to make amends for whatever rights were violated would say that the action was permissible in the sense that they're not going to do anything about it. It is de facto right in that sense from an ethical perspective, which I think is important. And there's a social permissibility as well, which these two things directly line up from ethical to social, but not always from social to ethical. That's a whole nother conversation, but I wanted to get that out there. And one of the things that Larkin prefaced the entire conversation with is that in a society of no rulers, the conflict equilibrium is how we would reach some sort, or how people do reach, let me rephrase that, reach some sort of, conflict equilibrium. It's in the name. How do we come up with a form of self-regulation in a sense? And to me, that was my biggest issue. Because you're not creating a society, you are no longer in a society of no rulers if you have people who are violating others' rights, and there is no system or there's no methodology or there is no understanding by which we should not do these things, or why we should seek restitution for these things, and why we shouldn't let them slip by if we are to uphold these principles. However, and I want to make one more thing before I pass it back over, it is very true that nobody has a compulsion to act against any sort of NAP violation. There is no responsibility on somebody if they see someone getting mugged to defend them or anything of that sort. But I don't think it would be in our best interest if we wanted a free society to simply let all of that stuff slide, because it maybe works in our favor. Maybe we hated the guy who was getting mugged. So
I want to make sure that I put a head on this, because it sounds like we all agree so far. But one of the things Shepard said when he was bringing this topic up was, if somebody calls, he's got a friend, let's say, and he said that if somebody calls his friend's wife the C word, that his friend would punch him. I guess instead of me telling Shepard what his position is, let me just ask him: is that punching justified? Is that okay?
Yeah, the scenario is just that I don't have this neighbor, but where I was pretending, just making up for the argument. Cowboy Harold is the neighbor, and Cowboy Harold tells everybody, "Hey, if y'all call my wife the C word, I'm going to flatten you. I'm going to punch you in the nose right now." And everybody looks at Cowboy Harold and goes, "Oh, what a gallant dude! And he's not going to put everything in crap. He's going to protect his wife. That's really neat. And what a character!" And we all know where Cowboy Harold stands, and he's a little bit different, but that's how he is. Is it morally, when I put on my philosopher hat and I start using big words that I don't really understand well, but when I put that hat on, is what he's doing correct? Is it right? No, absolutely not. I believe in the NAP. You don't initiate violence. And mean-mouthing somebody that's not initiating violence. It might be provoking it, but it's not really initiating it. And no, you don't have a right to punch somebody because they say something. On the other hand, I and this is away from the philosophy part of it, I don't know that it would be the worst world to have a few neighbors like Cowboy Harold. I wouldn't mind having Cowboy Harold as a neighbor. I'm willing to do little things like that. Now, when I take it to the extreme, well, what if Cowboy Harold said, "Hey, when I raise my magic sky cloth in the morning, I want you to stand out front and salute it, or I'll kick your butt." Okay, now that's an issue. He's initiating violence when I do something he doesn't prefer. So I don't know if I'm thinking technically, philosophically, I don't know where that line would be, because he has stated in those two examples, he's stated two preferences. One of them I'm willing to go along with, not calling his wife, I'll actually say the word right now, crazy. And then the other one would be raising the magic sky cloud. And like one of those I'm willing to do, the other one I'm not. So I think technically I would say no. As a neighbor, you don't get to just make up arbitrary stuff. And if I don't go along with it, then you're now allowed to initiate violence. So I don't think it's right.
What's up, Alfredo? What's up, Otto? Cop Block Hot Springs. Good to see you, James Freeman. Good to see you. Nicholas, Poor Dirt Farmer. Hey, guys. I hope you're well today. So, Shepard, would you be friends with a guy that would initiate violence for name calling?
Yes.
Why?
Yeah. Because as I've gotten older, I've realized what an imperfect critter I am, and how much I mess up, and how much I don't know yet. And every few months, I learn something new that I didn't know so long. And a few years ago, a mentor of mine died, Vietnam vet, killer through and through. Then he was a police professional for 25 years, and he was my mentor back when I was a cop. He stood for his whole life everything that I am now opposed to. And yet, that poor kid from Chicago never knew better. I kind of think of him like he's the tribesman out in the Amazon that's the missionaries never got to him. So he can still go to heaven. He's not responsible. He's not going to burn in Hades because he was never told the good truth. And so I kind of think that the old Cowboy Harold, he's never watched Disenthrall. He doesn't know that there is a better way, that there's philosophy out there. He just knows his mommy and daddy always taught him, hey, you get married, you take care of your woman. And he's trying to do that. So yes, I disagree with him completely, but he's welcome to borrow my weed trimmer. I'll borrow his wheelbarrow. We'll have a beer together. Do I think he's right? No. But I would still be friends with him.
What would you say to his victim when he said, hey, why are you friends with this guy? He punched me for name calling.
Don't know. That'd be a tough conversation. Yeah.
Right.
And if I was forced to pick sides, yeah. I mean, what would I do if they both calling to me and saying, hey, this guy's about to kick my butt? I mean, whose side do I take? I don't know.
Christian, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. I have lots of thoughts, to be honest, but I kind of want to
Awesome.
take a page from Larkin here, and I want to look at the way humans behave, right? And one of the things that alarms me about someone who's willing to use aggression over something that is ultimately pretty arbitrary, like don't call my wife a mean name. It could literally be anything. Don't call this stick by my foot a mean name. It has the same exact ethical weight, right? So we're all in agreement of that. That to me shows a fundamental misunderstanding of his position as an equal member of society, as far as the fact that there are no natural born tyrants. He doesn't get to initiate violence onto me for any arbitrary reason, no matter how petty. It doesn't matter if I understand exactly what he says. It literally doesn't matter. And to me, that person is not somebody that I could trust to associate with. Honestly, because you don't know them like the back of your own hand. So at what point are you going to make a left turn? They're in the passenger seat. You offered to take them to the gas station. They needed a ride. And then he decks you in the face. He says, oh, sorry, people who take left turns, I'm going to punch them in the face. You can't know, because they've already demonstrated the fact that they're willing to violate someone's rights over something entirely arbitrary. And to me, that's a huge red flag, huge, massive, we can't do this red flag. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but...
Shepard?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Excellent point. And there's this saying that people have of, well, you always knew where he stood. And maybe part of it would be a person telling you up front these things. And if it's too crazy, if it's a left turn versus mean-mouthing one's wife, maybe there would be a difference there. There isn't a difference from a social science, from a precise philosophic standpoint. There isn't a difference. But in the world that I live in, not the world that I want it to be, but in the world that I live in, there are going to be many neighbors like Harold. And if I could either have Harold or the director of a nonprofit organization who thinks that I should wear a mask, I kind of like Harold at this point because at least we can trade tools with each other. And yes, I can't completely count on him being perfect. What a cool dog. I can't completely count on him being perfect, but he's not the first guy that I'm going to get upset and lose sleep over.
We need next time you're on the show, we need a separate camera with I will put your dog, he will have his own camera on the stream because your dog is awesome.
Yeah, he moves around a lot, so I don't know, he'd probably go off shot. But so forgive me, we're all friends here and we're trying to get to the root of this. So I'm going to commit an argumentative sin and I'm going to immediately reposition in a different direction. And I want to start with a question. And so one of the claims that you were making is that this gentleman had no knowledge of the tenets of voluntarist philosophy or anything. So you couldn't expect them to follow them, right? They are completely ignorant to the idea, right? Is that a fair characterization of your point?
Yeah, it's not a complete you can do anything you want, but yeah, I'll offer more forgiveness than I otherwise would.
Okay,
or more
so
understanding.
Okay, no, yeah, that's fine. I completely understand that. That seems like a rational perspective from a perspective of amicability. I am interested, however, couldn't you make the same argument for everybody knows initiating violence without proper justification is wrong? Couldn't you just flip that same argument in the other direction and say, like, well, you're not supposed to hit somebody over name calling. That's just standard social etiquette. We don't do that.
Are you saying that I would have that expectation of all human beings to have that understanding?
I would say it would be just as reasonable as to say that he wouldn't have heard anything of voluntarism, so maybe we should give him the benefit of the doubt or whatever. I mean, to me, it seems like if we're going to be talking about like social norms, right, in the context of this conflict equilibrium is a social norm. It is a part of humanity that for a long time, I won't say time immemorial or something ridiculous like that, but for a lot of observable human history, conflict equilibrium has been something that has been reached in a society with no rulers, which I have contention with. But to me, it is just as to give the excuse that, oh, well, I've never heard of this voluntarism thing. It would be like, oh, well, I didn't know I couldn't hit somebody for, calling me dumb or something. I would find that extremely hard to believe. And granted, we're both operating off of some layer of ambiguity here, but you don't have to have an education in voluntarist philosophy to understand that you shouldn't punch people without a really good reason for doing so. Right?
Yeah, man, it's like people's entire upbringing can be wrapped up in like this sort of patriarchal, and I don't use that word in the SJW sense. I just mean in the sort of justified, I'm the protector of the family. If anybody talks crap about my wife, I need to defend her honor, and if I don't, I'm a poor husband. I'm a terrible man. Like, people are taught that from birth, so I think it's totally expected to have people like that.
No, that's fine. So these people can be taught these things, right? But it's another thing entirely to like believe that it's actually like to believe that it is and to know that it's wrong. Like, what's a good example off the top of my head? They're called the contrasting something. There's a name for it. And it's essentially like where you do one thing, even though you know the right answer is to do the other thing because that's what you were told to do, or someone gave you the orders to do XYZ thing, right? And so I don't, again, maybe this is just me being super wishful in my thinking here, but I don't think, or maybe I've just associated with awesome people for my entire life. But I don't think it takes some grand philosophy education to understand that people have rights outside of name calling that would make it to where you can't just like punch somebody and expect there to be no repercussions for it over words. But
I think I understand. I think I want to say we're all in agreement. Like, I think Shepard is saying that, it's not too big of a deal to be friends with a guy that's kind of rough around the edges in terms of his implementation of leading a good life and doing the right thing and not initiating force. I wouldn't be super close friends with people like that. And if I did have one that was sort of in my middle range of orbits of friendships, I would definitely give him a lot of shit if they ever talked about hitting somebody over words, I'd probably, call them a baby that couldn't handle meanie words directed at them, and probably break them of that real quick. But like Shepard said, there's worse things to deal with than people like that. What do you think?
I also think it's subjective.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I do that. I'm used to talking to one other person, not two. Shepard, what do you think?
No, I think you're both right, and I think Christian's right in that it's subjective. And if I say, "Oh, well, I'm okay with somebody telling me I can't call their wife the C word, but I'm not okay with them telling me that I have to stand for the flag when it's paraded in front," well, yeah, it is completely arbitrary or subjective on my part. And so from a true, pure political standpoint, or not political, sorry to use foul language on your show, from a philosophical standpoint, it is not cool. However, I have, every year I get more and more, like, I get to come into Disenthrall circles to exercise my brain. And then I go back out into the very sad, idiocracy world. And I have to go, okay, I know you're drinking that because you think it does a body good. And I'm not going to hate you because you're drinking a bad liquid that's bad for you. You're doing the best you can, you moron. And I'm going to love you anyway, neighbor. And maybe in time, we'll have enough beers and barbecues that I can share a few things with you. I don't know. I think I'm getting calmer and more tolerant as years go by. I don't know. I don't think it's right. I think it's just my response to it is different.
All right, Christian, you'll get the last word on this. What are your final thoughts?
Well, I kind of wanted. I was hoping to get the opportunity to bring up the example that Larkin did in the very beginning, which to me was like one of the most preposterous examples you could possibly give for something like this, which was where if you were drunk driving and somebody in the town said, "We're sick of your drunk driving," pulls you out of your car, takes your keys, pushes your truck into the lake, and then nobody in the town does anything about it, it's like, great, we've reached conflict equilibrium. Again, like, and that is his own example of conflict equilibrium. I'm not making some like, horrendously huge straw man. That's a big deal. Ripping someone out of their vehicle, taking their keys, dumping their car into the lake. These are things that, again, nobody has to act on, but you've officially got a ruler, or someone who thinks at least that they are a ruler inside of your society, and they're a state of nature being. And so if someone, and this goes for the farmer as well, if that person comes the next day and shoots the farmer or shoots the man who threw his truck into the lake in the face, I, as someone who cares about being ethically consistent, can't do anything about it because that's just restitution. They're in a state of nature being. They've violated their rights.
Conflict of equilibrium. Shot him in the face. We're done.
Yeah, it's over, right? But that's the thing about the conflict equilibrium, is that if the entire town said he was justified in pushing his truck into the lake, and then you do the justified, ethically justified thing and getting your restitution for it, and the entire town comes at you with pitchforks, there is no conflict equilibrium. You have a mob government. That's all it is. That's why I reject the idea that this could exist in a society with no rulers, because it is rulers. It's just communal rulers. But that's,
Was Larkin suggesting that this could exist or would exist in a society with no rulers? I missed that if you did.
In the very beginning, please, everybody, feel free to go back and check this if you think it's wrong. He says, this is how people would act in a society with no rulers.
Okay.
That was his observation. And to me, that was my biggest, okay, I don't know about that. But.
Well, I missed that, so good catch. James Freeman says, where do I donate for a better microphone for Shepard? I would be happy to use some Disenthrall supporter funds to hook him up with some good equipment if he would.
Okay. So in all fairness, I've got two good mics and I've got all this, and it's a beautiful day, and I wanted to sit on the back deck, and I tested this, and obviously it's not working. I'm going to go off screen for 3 minutes. No. When I come back, you'll be able to hear me.
No. It is perfectly fine for today's show. It is not that bad at all. I think we were just joking around, so no big deal. Please enjoy your time in your backyard. Like, I'm seeing the reflection in the mirror, and I see mountains in the distance, and I am filled with envy right now. It looks like you're in an amazing place in the world.
And James, I paid $12.95 for this thing, so that's that, mister.
All
There we
right.
go.
Shepard, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, we have more things to talk about. I know that Christian had last call, so I am more than happy to pick it up another time. I definitely do have thoughts, but I know we have a lot more wonderful content, so I'm happy for that.
Well, I mean, if there was anything like important or material in what he said, my
Okay,
final
yes.
thoughts. Okay, go ahead, Shepard.
Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. We all live on the same street, and some dude's driving drunk, and our kids are trying to be out there playing on this shared communal space that we have all contracted that we're going to drive safely on this street in front of our house. And this person is doing something that is very high risk in our subjective opinion. Now, I'm saying that to basically say the subjective opinion could be very wrong. The community could decide, hey, women shouldn't really be driving, so that's high risk. So it could get completely out of hand. And I'm admitting that and saying, yeah, that's a bad part of my argument. However, however, if we see this person doing this in this high risk activity where our kids are out playing, and we go talk to them the first time, say, hey man, do me a favor, and if you're at the bar and you need a ride home, I don't want you to, let me come pick you up and take you home. And the guy says, F you, and he continues driving drunk and swerving and running over mailboxes. At some point, I'm going to do something about it. And I don't know if we look at all the possible things in today's society, the proper thing to do would be to call the cops and let the government come and take control of them. And that would be one way of doing things. If there was a DRO situation, then I would call my DRO, my insurance provider, and say, hey, I'd like to rat on my neighbor, and then let them handle it. But then when I think, well, what would the three of us right now, today, as we're thinking about this problem, what do we do to stop this neighbor from doing something that's really dangerous? I mean, what are some good ideas? And the one that Larkin puts out there, I don't know, kind of sounds like that might work. It's initiating violence. It's wrong, but I'm trying to think of better things to do.
Okay, well, I can give you a few ideas, or Christian, you want that? You want to take it?
Well, I mean, go with the ideas, because I was going to come at a different angle, but
okay, I'll do ideas and then you can angle it.
Sure.
So, number one, I wouldn't buy a house where I plan to raise kids without some kind of agreement for the roads to have rules that would prevent drunk driving on them, and those rules for that privately owned road would also have repercussions that people driving on the road would have to agree to before they drove on the road, and if they drove drunk on the road, then whatever repercussions were in the agreement is what that would be visited upon them. That would all be consensual and ethical, moral. I wouldn't, if it was unowned public land, there's no victim unless there was a victim. And if there's no victim, then there's no crime and there's no justification for me ripping the guy out of his car and driving his car into the lake. If there was a victim in that situation, then there's likely justification for me to do far worse than yanking him out of the car and throwing it, and driving his car. Anyway, so those are my thoughts. Christian?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to take this into a bit of a maybe we'll say we'll look at this from like another philosophical perspective. Is that what I'm seeing is an issue of a philosophy of wants, and so a part of ethics is just how you interact with other people, right? And you can have an ethical system that is completely arbitrary and nonsensical, and it still technically fall under the purview of an ethical system, as long as it is a set of rules or guidelines that you use to interact from one human being to another human being, right? So one of my issues is with what I call philosophies of want is that they ultimately, you have to ask yourself a question whenever you're in these kind of interactions, and it's like, what do you want out of this, right? So if I was to ask, for the sake of time, I'll say, if I was to ask, let's put myself into that position, and I wanted to stop somebody from driving into that road, I would say, well, I want my kids to be safe. That's my priority in this. And if my voluntarist friend standing right next to me would say, well, I want his capacity as a self-governing human being to be maintained. And so these are they have two completely different ends, right? And one of them is they're both ultimately arbitrary, right? Because we live in a system of subjective morality. So we have to choose one over the other. But to do so in any matter that is consistent, it's difficult for any philosophy of wants to really justify what you're doing outside of because I want the world to be that way. And that can lead to all sorts of different scary positions. And I know you've already admitted that you're looking at this from a subjective perspective, but if those two people were standing next to each other and you were a completely neutral party, knowing what you know now, and someone was like, well, I want the road to be safer. And then the other person was like, well, I want him to, be a free human. Which one would you pick, Sorry, anybody could take that. I mean,
Good talk.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Shepard. I guess last word on that, and then we'll move on. You have any? I don't know is valid.
Yeah, I mean, my bottom line is I want to have a perfect ethical. Like I want, like as Christian said, a world of wants. I want everybody to put the non-aggression principle as a big front standard that everybody lives by. I think the world would be best if we all did that. That's what I want. However, tomorrow, not even a tenth of the world is going to do that. So since they're not, how do I go out in the world and function tomorrow? And what am I going to tolerate? What's likely to happen? What will I put up with while we shoot for the best? Gosh, I sound like a frickin' capital L libertarian. Not that I'm trying to give you a segue or anything.
That was really good, actually. That was so good, I didn't even notice you did it. So, the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire tweeted, legalize child labor. Children will learn more on a job site than in public school. To which Gary Johnson says, I'm sorry, but no. This isn't what libertarianism means to millions of Americans. Pushing a disturbing and out-of-touch stance on child labor is entirely detached from what people need in America today. This does not advance liberty or help change people's opinions. Christian, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm just going to go out as the ethics guy and go ahead and say there's nothing unethical about child labor as long as they consent to doing so. And people are going to be like, whoa, children consenting. Don't read too far into that. Okay. So this is the biggest thing is that there's no compulsory child labor, right? That would be the line where I was like, well, we must have child labor. It'll produce our, manufacturing capacity 1 billion% or whatever. None of that matters. As long as it doesn't say that. And if like Ayn Rand, for example, actually, I think a few of the characters in some of her books had experiences where they were just so motivated as children that they ran off to go sneak into the factories and work. And do I think most children would do that? No. Do I think some terrible parents will exploit their children's consent in ways that we'll have to look hard into to make sure that their consent is not being violated? Yes. But if a child wants to go and earn some money doing some small jobs or whatever they're capable of doing that the employer believes they're fit for, who am I to say no to them?
Yeah, here was my response on Twitter. Yeah, so now here's my actual thoughtful response. When I was 13, I was far more motivated than my peers. I was far more capable than my peers. I tried to get a job, and I was able to get a job under the table for cash only to do some menial labor that honestly I was way above being able, I could have done more than I did. But it had to be under the table, and doing so put the guy, a really nice guy, at risk. He had a company, and he paid me under the table because I wanted to work and I needed money. He was under threat of violence for letting me do something that I really wanted to do that was wholly constructive. It was basically clerical, mail clerk type work. Then later, my first job was at IHOP, and I was not allowed. I was one of the most productive waiters in the building. I was very capable. I was unlike, like there's a lot of waiters at IHOP, let's be honest, that aren't really happy with their career path where they are in life. Maybe they're in their 40s and they're still a waiter at IHOP and they don't really care anymore. We've all experienced these types of waiters. Well, I was at the beginning of my sort of career and I was excited and pumped I was hired for my first job and I was so proud and I was ready to bust ass, and I did bust ass, except that I was limited to only like 15 hours a week or something by law. And so I was hamstrung from the get-go, and that really just let all the wind out of my sails. Like all the other employees got seniority over me because I just couldn't work the full-time hours that they did, or even the part-time hours that they did. And that was wrong. That was literally guns pointed at my employers and me to prevent me from associating in a productive way that I wanted to work on. That is immoral. And that is what Gary Johnson is speaking out against here. Yeah, Shepard?
I agree completely. I think that there have been abuses, but I would even say, I'll be the bad guy here. I'll help you get some hate mail. Look at the fringe case of child labor. Think about a country that is not as wealthy, perhaps, as the people in this great nation are. Think about some place where everybody is living in complete poverty, sleeping on dirt, eating worms if they're lucky enough to find one, and the parents, you initiate violence against their 8-year-old kid to go out and work in the factory for 16 hours that day, which for an entrepreneur would be a good start to a day. So this poor 8-year-old kid goes out and works and puts in 7 days a week, working 14, 16 hours a day. Does that suck? Absolutely. Do I wish that poor kid could be playing Legos and Lincoln Logs and hanging out and learning to read and all this? Absolutely. And if I really care, what's my solution? Should I join with Gary Johnson and other Democrats and Republicans like Gary Johnson? And should I ask some people to initiate violence against two people or families or parties that are making agreements? Or should I perhaps offer 10 cents more an hour? I have a feeling that if I go to this poor place and I offer this kid $1.20 an hour, instead of the $1.10 that they're making, I offer $1.20 an hour for 40 hours a week. I'll bet you I can buy his time. And if I own his time, I'm probably going to have some educational things he needs to do, and I can make his life better. So for everybody out there that's not willing to spend $45 a week, shut the hell up. If you're willing to go out and outcompete the people who you think are abusing children, okay, now you've stepped up. Now we can talk. But if you're not willing to outcompete the free market for these kids' time, don't go and ask a third party to initiate violence to stop that transaction from happening. Just to get you some hate mail. That's all I was going for there.
No, I appreciate you. Christian, any last thoughts before I move on?
No, I just think it would, again, just to reiterate, I think it would just be really important that the proper measures are put in place to ensure that it is truly the child that is the one who wants to go and work, and that they maintain control of the assets that they earn as well. There is no paycheck goes to the parents or anything like that. They'll need their own bank account or whatever so that they can get paid, etc., because that is the fruit of their own labors, yada, yada. But I just wanted to make sure that got up there. So
the last thing that I thought about mentioning is that one of the main problems with the Libertarian Party's existence is because it gives fucking jackasses somehow the thought that they can speak for libertarians and libertarian ideas.
Amen.
No. No. Just because you've sullied yourself pathetically like a worm by involving yourself in politics doesn't give you the right to declare what libertarianism is. Here's how you do it, Gary. When you say you don't appeal to the popular, millions of libertarians everywhere think this, therefore that is libertarianism. No, libertarianism's market differentiator, the thing that makes it different from all these other ideologies, dare I say parties, is that it's based on an actual principle. And the way principles function is not based on popularity. It's not a vote amongst everybody that decides to use the label. It's a principle. So if you're going to tell the world, if you're going to tweet with your little Twitter phone like a dick, if you're going to do that, then the way you do it is you say, look, the libertarian principle is this, non-aggression. Here's how what that person did violates or conflicts with that principle. Therefore, libertarians calling themselves libertarians that necessarily subscribe to this principle called don't start none, won't be none. Like, you have to connect these two things. You can't just... Anyway. Yeah, that's one of the things...
implied. Sorry.
It's one of the things it just disgusts me the most when they get a little bit of political clout in this dumb, half-retarded popularity contest called Libertarian Party politics. They take that clout and they think they start to actually speak for the principles. And every time I find these people speaking for the principles, almost every time, they're not speaking for the principles. They're speaking their feels onto the principles. Like, you don't like when kids are working jobs in, coal mines. I get that. We all feel that that's not what should be happening. But you can't then project your feels onto the principle that the libertarian ideas are built on. Anyway, off my soapbox.
Amen. Amen.
All right. What's next? Standards. Okay, so this is normally I would have probably done this as just a video where I talk to people. So you guys are here and I would like to make this as interactive as possible. So if you want to interrupt me or if you have thoughts that you would like to add, please do so. And just to make it non-awkward so you guys aren't just sitting there staring at me while I talk, I will make myself big. And then if either of you start talking, then I will cut to you. Okay? Is that fair? All right.
Very fair for it.
So I'm gonna go on a little adventure here. So, oops, wrong button. I'm gonna go on a little adventure here. I want to talk about standards, and I don't think enough people put enough thought, like really think about standards, about having standards, and what your standards should be on all kinds of different things. In the past, like years ago on the channel, I've talked about things like what constitutes what I consider to be a true apology, a real apology. I have put my brain power behind thinking about what does apologizing for something mean? What should a good apology look like? And I came up with a set of standards for myself. When I need to apologize to someone for something, I've talked about this before. Admission, contrition, restitution, reconfiguration. 4 parts. You admit you were wrong. You show that you are not happy with yourself for having done wrong. You make restitution. You make it right. Whatever you did wrong, you make right. You pay them back. You fix what you damaged, whatever. And then you change your behavior to show that you will not let it happen again by acting differently. So those are the 4 things that I expect for myself. Those are my standards for an apology. When I apologize to somebody, I run through those 4 things. And when someone else apologizes to me, I look for those 4 things. Okay, well, they admitted they were wrong, but man, they don't really seem like they're sorry about it. And they haven't really done anything to make up for it. And I definitely don't see any change of behavior. So this feels like, a non-apology. This feels like a manipulation, because a lot of apologies are manipulations. And one of the sayings that I occasionally will put out there is that apologies without changes in behavior are almost always manipulations. Anyway, so I didn't want to do another deep dive into what makes a true apology, but I wanted to just point out that everyone needs to put thought into standards for all these different things. Another example, for feedback. Being a content creator, I get input from 100 sources. I've got almost 1,000 videos on the internet over the past, 7 to 10 years or however long I've been doing it. People comment on this stuff all the time. I get so much input and feedback from people, whether or not I know them, that it's kind of insane. It's impossible to handle on a daily basis. And that caused me, but look, some of it is critical. Some of it is really good, important stuff. But I get so much. How do I filter the stuff that's just trolling, the worthless stuff, the harmful stuff, the insulting stuff, from the important stuff that actually criticizes a position that I was wrong on? I had to think about my standards for what constitutes feedback. When I give somebody else feedback, what elements, what parts, what things do I need to make sure and give them so that it's good feedback instead of worthless feedback or low quality feedback or trolling? Because most of the comments you get on YouTube is trolling, honestly. So I put time and I thought about it. And again, it's kind of a 4-part thing. It's just a coincidence that it was 4 parts, but it was, first of all, I want to identify for somebody what they did wrong or what position they were wrong on. I want to assess how that wrong action or that position affects the world or the people involved. I want to describe how I think they should make up for the effects of their actions or their position. And then I want to suggest what I think they should do going forward. Like if a piece of feedback, positive or negative, includes those 4 elements, that is gold. That is something, even if I disagree with. Look, even if they say that, Patrick, you're wrong on abortion or something, and they give me all 4 parts of that, I will consider every word that they say because they took the time to give me quality feedback. Whether or not it was right or wrong, whether or not I agree with it, I will consider it because it has reached my standards, right? That's what I'm saying. And so when I see, I'm deep diving into feedback now. So the point is, again, standards. Another one, this is a big one, a really, really big one. Now this one, every single person out there, every single person listening to this, if you haven't thought about what your standard is for believing something, there's a problem. Because most people don't think about it. Most people just go through life believing what they believe and not believing what they disbelieve. And not really knowing, maybe, they'll probably, if you ask them, they'll probably say, well, it's reason, it's evidence, it's, whatever. But they've never actually examined their standards or put things to the test of a set of standards. My standards for what I believe, and I've said this many times on the channel, I require logical consistency and conformity to reality. What does that mean? For something to be logically consistent, it has to conform to the rules of reason. For something to be conform to reality, it has to be congruent with some evidence. It has to have some evidence, something to demonstrate the truth of it in reality. So those are the 2 things. Those are my standards. When somebody approaches me with a new idea, like, what happened recently on Twitter? This guy wants me to believe that the golden nature matching the golden ratio proves the existence of God. So I look at that and I'm like, okay, rather than just like respond with feelings or my gut reaction or whatever, I just immediately, I go straight to my standards for what I believe, because I want to, and I say this often, this is not an original saying by me, but it's definitely one I say often and I've adopted. I want to believe as many true things as I can, and I want to not believe as many false things as I can. That's a 2-edged sword. It cuts both ways. And it requires a harsh standard for what I consider to be true, for something that I believe. And so I immediately go to, okay, is this thing that I'm being approached with, this idea that they're wanting me to believe, is it logically consistent? Can I just check the reasoning behind it to see if it even makes sense? Because if it doesn't even make sense, if it isn't even logically consistent, if it's not logical or consistent, then on it, I don't even have to look for evidence. We know it's not true on its face. And then after that, I say, okay, well, it's not illogical. It could be the case. Now I go looking for evidence to back it up. I go looking for evidence to justify this thing that is valid. So those are my standards. All of you need to have done the thinking on all of these categories, and I hope my guests, who I'll bring back in now, I hope my guests have thought of other categories that they wish people had put time and thought into developing personal standards for. Because if you haven't put thought into it, then you're just going to be sort of ruled by your feelings and your whims, and especially when it comes to things you believe, you're going to find yourself believing things not because they're valid, sound, or evidenced in reality, but just because maybe it's popular or common, or that's how you were raised, or it would be uncomfortable if it turned out to not be true. Things like that. Like standards, people, standards. Who wants to go first? Shepard?
I agree completely, and I love your one example about when somebody brings a new idea up to me or tells me about something. I would say that I have a different standard, which we're not arguing. I think there's a different standard for believing in something and saying, yes, this is a true thing that I now believe in until provided with different evidence, and the stink factor. There are some things like the vaccines that are so-called vaccines that are out there. I've seen the conspiracy theory videos about how it's this or that or the other thing with all of their anecdotal evidence and their appeal to emotion, and they're repeating the same one anecdotal case over and over and over, and it's not enough to convince me of the point. However, I would say that it has raised, I can't compete. Okay, later, folks. I've been outdone on the camera.
I'm so sorry, Shepard. My family walked in, and my daughter has hatched. We incubated, hatched, and are raising like 20 chicks right now. We're going to end up keeping a few of them. But
that's awesome.
This is my daughter. So we've got, for those of you who haven't seen her in a long time, she's looking very different. Say hello. You want to say hi? Hi. Yeah. So she.
Hi. Has she named that chick?
Is this Quasi? Yeah, it's Quasimodo.
Oh, cool.
It was the only chick born with deformities. He's got like a hunchback and a weird bent toe. So we called him Quasi.
Wow, looks like they're good friends.
All right, guys. Thank you. Careful. All right. Up.
That is so awesome. That's good parenting right there.
I'm sorry, Shepard. Please continue.
No. And as a kid, I had chicks. So stinking of the think factor. Speaking of the stink factor, there are some things that just bring up something that makes me go, wait, something's going on here. This ain't right. Like, for example, I don't think that the current injections that people are taking are a good, tested, true, scientific solution to a real problem. Now, if you ask me to provide evidence, I can't do so. I'm so confounded even by the executive summaries of white papers and such that I don't have enough medical knowledge to read several 100,000 pages of various virology studies, et cetera, et cetera. So no, go find the evidence yourself. Well, yeah, I should, but I don't have the technical ability or the interest. So at this point, if the stink factor is raised enough, then I'll just say, I don't think I'm going to put that in my body. But it hasn't risen to the standard of saying the pharmaceutical companies are trying to poison you so that you'll be sick forever and they'll be able to make $40,000 a year off you for the rest of your life. Does that sound plausible? Yeah, maybe. But I haven't seen the evidence for it. So I love the idea of having these standards. I wish everybody did. And as you say, that's just one example. But standards for work, standards for how much effort are you going to put forward in the world? What are you going to believe? What makes a friend worth having, as Christian pointed out earlier? Should I have friends who don't believe in very important things that I believe in? I don't know. But I think it's an excellent idea to have standards and have them solidified in one's mind.
Christian?
Yeah. So I think probably for any of the younger people out there or anybody who might be in this situation, one that I've spent a lot of time thinking about is for dating, for finding like someone who you would want to be like a life partner or just a partner in general, someone you want to invest time into. And you know, for me, those things are capacity for growth, the plans to actualize that growth, and the ability to hold compelling conversation. If we can get through those three things, we can work out the rest as we go on.
How's it been working for you?
Oh, pretty terribly. I was going to curse very strongly, but yeah, pretty not so great. But you know, I have the standards, right? And I was going to make the joke. I was going to be like, yeah, you got to have your dating standards. You know, 7, know what you're worth. You know, whatever. But speaking really about this, you know, this is to me, it's something that's very important. For maybe for some people it isn't. I know a lot of people will pretty much go out with anything that has a pulse. Some people, pulse isn't even a requirement. So, you know, I mean, but to me, this is one of those things that I have to have high standards to some extent for it. And I don't think they're unrealistic standards, but I am proving, well, the world is proving that they are in fact high standards. So just one other way to look at it. So.
Yeah. So, you know, drop a comment, guys, if there's areas in your life that you've put thought into, what your standards are. Drop a comment saying, like, what area of your life do you wish more people put thought into? Because I want to know about all the different areas where I need to think about what my standards should be. I think this is a really useful thing that everybody should definitely do. Okay.
And I'm going to toss out a real quick one here that I do.
Yeah.
I'm 50 pounds overweight, and my day job is being a business owner, but every so often I go out and work on the line, and that is standing all day or for many hours at a time. And at the end of the night, I usually, if I work, I need to have 2 martinis for the pain to go away. And I have set this standard for myself that I am only allowed to whine about it if I did at least 2 minutes of stretching that morning and 2 minutes of stretching the evening before. And if I haven't done that, then from a Stoic standpoint, I kind of knew what I needed to do, and I didn't do it. So yeah, of course there's going to be a painful consequence. And I don't deserve it, but I kind of do. I bought that pain that I feel. And I think that's just a tiny little minuscule thing, but that is a very strict standard that I've set. No whining unless I've done 2 minutes of stretching that morning and the previous evening. And then I'm entitled to wine while drinking the martinis with lots of olives in them.
James Freeman says, good luck finding a female that can hold a compelling conversation. You're going to have to turn gay, apparently. Jimmy says, standards in raising a child. Ooh, yes. Yes. That is such an important one. Maybe the most important one. That I started the Peaceful Parenting University over it. You can check that out at peacefulparentinguniversity.com. Actually, I just created a YouTube channel where we're going to start releasing the videos for free. If you want to find out how to raise your children in a principled environment, in a principled home, according to the voluntarist principles of non-aggression, and check out that YouTube channel, Peaceful Parenting University. It only has 1 or 2 videos on it so far, but I'm going to start dropping them once a week or so as we go forward. Stephen, thank you for the super chat. We're going to get a real comment from you soon, it looks like. That's cool. Okay.
Okay, Boomer, can I interrupt for a moment?
Yeah.
Where are you reading these comments for anybody that might be watching that don't know how to sign in and make comments? I was calling myself Okay, Boomer.
We are streaming to like 5 different places. So I'm watching comments on DLive, YouTube, Float, and Odysee right now. So anywhere you are, anywhere we're streaming, I'm watching for comments from you guys. Okay, so there is I have 3 things left, and one is just a quick. Actually, no, it's like, okay. There are companies that purport to be freedom oriented, and this one in particular is a good example. This is the Linux Foundation. The Linux Foundation is one of the figureheads in the free and open source software community. This is a group of people that have worked on open source software for years, and the Linux Foundation takes donations from people that use Linux. Even the large companies like Google and Microsoft, they use Linux on tons of their servers, and sort of to pay it forward and to continue the development of this server that they use, they donate to the Linux Foundation. Well, recently, the Linux Foundation has taken upon itself to become much more of an activist organization in social ways, but now also with their new initiative, the Linux Foundation Public Health, in which case they are trying to assist in the development of things like what I'm calling, and I haven't heard anybody else call it yet, so I'm patenting this term, wink, wink, Vaxxports, vaccine passports. So if you are a supporter, I know there's a lot of tech people on this platform, if you are a supporter of the Linux Foundation because, you know, they've been part of the Linux ecosystem for years, this and for many other reasons, you guys might want to maybe withhold those donations. But the thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is when companies like IBM is now one of maybe the leading company in IT developing the cryptography and the apps behind vaccine passports, which is a massive new quasi-government, quasi-corporatistic piece of software or suite of softwares and apps that is coming. Wow, what was this? August of last year, I called it. I said that this stuff was coming. They're going to start restricting your ability to attend events, to fly on planes, to go into government facilities, unless you to travel the world, unless you have this vaccine. And sure enough, they're making it happen. The Washington State is already passing this stuff. There's a Foo Fighters concert. No, Red Hot Chili Peppers concert happening where no one that isn't vaccinated is allowed to buy a ticket. This stuff is rolling out in real time as we speak. It's happening. And IBM is doing everything they can to lead that charge. And so there's a lot of intelligent nerds that, normally these are my people, the people that I like, the people that are changing the world with technology, and they are jumping on the tyranny bus. And I just wanted to have a quick conversation with you guys about how to deal with that, how to deal with private companies that not only succumb to tyranny, because that's how they're going to implement all this, right? They're not going to send men with guns to the concert venue to check vaccine passports with government agents. No, they're going to make a law that says that the company that owns the venue is going to have to implement the restrictions, else they lose their business license. And so government sort of backdoor tyranny through the companies. We saw this with the masks, guys, everywhere, right? The governments didn't send cops to every to every location to check for masks in all the venues where people were gathering. No. They didn't do that. They didn't have the resources to do it. Even if they wanted to do it that way, they couldn't have. What they did do, though, was tell the businesses that, look, if you want to keep your business license, if you want to stay open, you have to implement our tyranny for us. And so that's coming. That is happening. And I wanted to sort of have this conversation where how do we deal with these companies that not only what's the word? Succumb's the wrong word. They have government guns pointed at them. If they want to keep their business, then they have to kiss the ring and implement the rules that they're ordered to implement. But then you also have companies that literally go out of their way to take massive amounts of government money, like IBM does now, to actually implement the technological tools of the tyranny. Christian, what do you think?
Well, there are multiple levels to this. For a corporation like IBM, I used to be an investor in IBM back in the day, so I did a lot of research. I say back in the day, it wasn't even really that long ago, honestly, but I did a lot of research into like what they did, where they were going, what kind of stuff they do. And it's not like you can vote with your dollar really with IBM. Their number one money earner is the world's largest supercomputer at the moment, and IBM Watson, both of which are not like consumer things, right? These are not things that we can be like, oh, well, I just won't use the world's largest supercomputer anymore. Haha, take that, IBM. So there's, you could go down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out every company that associates with IBM and like boycotting all of them. But that's a lot to ask for a lot of people. And so I really don't have a great answer from the enablers, is what I would call them in this position, the ones who are enabling the government to enact their tyrannical policies in a more optically convenient manner. But as far as addressing like local venues, there is, I have a weird, how about this? It's difficult for me to make a hard line rule because it depends on how much I value the products or services that the place offers. So for example, basically the only gun range in the area that doesn't have like a 3-month wait list opened back up, but was still under masks. And so I had to ask myself, I really want to shoot. I live in a city. So am I going to go put a mask on and support these guys who I've been shooting at with a while now and, help keep them afloat? And to me, that was worth putting the mask on. But if you have a hardline rule that says no masks, then of course you wouldn't do that. If you have a hardline rule, no vaccines, and, until all things are shut down, if it's a concert, this is a luxury and you have the capacity 100% to say like, hey, I don't want to participate in this. I'm not getting the vaccine. You won't get my support through the concert. I don't think what you're doing is right. But if it's like Walmart and the gas station and the bus stop and where you go to school or where you work and everything has a vaccine passport and it's all under government tyranny, well, then we're in the same position as taxes, essentially. You can do your best to evade it if you choose to do so, or you can comply in an effort to reduce the guns of government used against you. Or in this case, the use of private force under threat of government guns, which to me is just government guns one step removed. But that's my little rant on it.
All right, Shepard, you have any thoughts?
Yes, I have a couple. I have an embarrassment admission, and then I have a little bit of what I see as some hope. And the embarrassment apology is that my small business, my wife and I are both voluntarists. We are both not really into the whole face diaper thing or a vaccine thing. We have different viewpoints, and we could be very wrong, but we have different viewpoints. And so we have a handful of staff members, and we serve the public, or we serve our clients. However, the property that we use is managed by a board of directors, and that board of directors happens to have on it the former CEO of Pfizer. And so they have some very strong opinions about things. And so we have to tread very lightly. This property that we use is the only one that will allow our business to continue going. So we have to tread lightly. And so there was a rule. And of course, we were as lenient as we could be. The fortunate thing was that in our county, the rule was that if someone had a medical issue that they couldn't wear a mask, then we didn't have to enforce it. And so I would never violate someone's HIPAA privacy rights by asking them if they had a medical issue. But there were ways that it worked out, and it all worked out. But I did not want to fire an incredible human being staff member because they were doing exactly what I believe in. But I was in a tough position. If I didn't say, hey, y'all have to wear masks, then I could say, hey, y'all don't have to wear masks, and why don't we just shut this business down? My wife and I will go find something else to do. You guys can go find something else to do. You'll find new apartments to rent. It's not a big deal. Like, I could either have that conversation, or I could say, let's bow and kiss the ring. And so I was cowardly, and I tried to bend as much as possible while still staying within policy and rules and such. So there are a lot of businesses, I think, that are in tough positions, as I was. Here is the bit of hope. The bit of hope that I have is that it occurred to me that they don't expect 100% compliance. They are very happy. A dictator is very happy if 99% of the people vote for them. So then the question becomes, how do you become that 1% that they're like, this person is such a hassle, why deal with them? So My wife and I sold our house earlier this month, and we're buying a new one later this month. That's a long way away, way out in the country. I spoke to the HOA president, and he said, the $50 a year you're paying just goes to the roads. We don't do anything else. We don't even enforce the HOA rules. The county is very lenient. That's what I've chosen to do. I'm running away, is my long story short. I'm going into a deeper, darker corner, further and further away from the huge army that's marching toward me. Should I go down to town hall with a bunch of guns and fight the man? I could for a few minutes, but that wouldn't turn out well in the long run. So I choose instead to be a coward and retreat and say, hey, if I can get another good 3 to 5 years, another good 5 to 25 years, my kids can get a few years, grandkids. So yeah, I don't know what the correct answer is, but my hope is that we can all be part of that 1% that they're like, they're such a hassle, we're not going to go after them.
I'd like to say real quick that it's important to note that courage is the virtue between the vices of cowardice and recklessness. So to be reckless is not to be courageous. To be courageous is also not to be cowardice. So saying that you won't go in and essentially forfeit your life for a few minutes is not the same thing as being a coward. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Say that again.
Thanks for that.
What's the saying? Say it again.
This is from the Nicomedean Ethics from Aristotle, but he says that the virtue of courage is between the vices of recklessness and cowardice. So all virtues exist between two vices, essentially, is his idea. And I think it's a pretty good way of looking at it. So
I am going to write that down and look it up. All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Cool. Yeah. Again,
there's nothing courageous about reckless behavior. So yeah, I mean,
standards. You all need to think about where your standards are. Where are your lines in the sand? And are you thinking about it beforehand? James Freeman says the majority of people want the tyranny, therefore it only makes sense to run away until the tyranny crushes the majority of the people. Stephen Mulvey, as part of, I guess, his super chat, thank you for that, I appreciate it, says, regarding conflict equilibrium, I would live in a covenant community where all disputes are handled by police incorporated and courts incorporated. This guards against vigilantism and or disproportionate responses. Yeah, that was kind of my response to the whole topic. I would live in a place that had agreements around the property that would handle that stuff, and I wouldn't live in a place that didn't, if I wanted to have children that I wanted to be able to play outside on the streets. That would be something that we would have to. So that's the thing, though, and I'll let you say what you're about to say, Shepard. Like, right now, we offload, without thinking about it, we offload all of these problems to government agents to solve. Oh, that's the public street. Oh, that's the domain of the police. And there's laws that handle the risky people driving drunk on those. Whereas in a free society, we have to take an active role in our own lives and develop our own standards and our requirements for what we do, what we want and what we don't want. We take what we want and pay for it. And we don't take what we don't want and we don't pay for that too. Like that is freedom, but it involves doing more legwork, doing more thinking, taking more responsibility onto ourselves instead of, trusting daddy government to do it. Shepard, what were you about to say?
I was about to say, you and I both do live in that world where vigilante justice is a possibility and where there is a coercive government doing things. So ideally, if we could wave our magic wands and we could go to our ideal society, then yes, we could design it as we want. But what I see as likely now and likely in 5 years and in 20 years is very different than pure intellectual and philosophic purity. So when we discuss these things, I think that's on one level. And then the other level is, what ought my neighbors to know about me and what ought I to know about them? So we do live in that place right now, unfortunately.
Okay, so I have two things left. One, we have another libertarian party on Twitter. And then the last thing is, well, actually two more things after that. One is I'm going to talk about vaccine safety, which is something I don't do as a rule. So I'm going to be very specific in how I talk about it, because we have a rule on this platform against anything that involves medical advice. Why? Because we're not medical experts, but we'll get into that in a second. And then I'm going to end the show with a big announcement that I'm excited about that literally happened about 10 minutes before we went live. So let's start with Libertarian Party nonsense again. Here's another tweet that Bear's talking about. This from Justin O'Donnell. I don't know this guy, but he's a blue check mark apparently. He says, he tweets, the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire's executive committee has voted to expel Jackie Perry and terminate her membership. The vote was 4-0-1, with the chair abstaining. The cause was for NAP violations by doxing the chair. She can appeal to the JC, but they're all Mises. Mises caucus is what he means by that. To which I had to respond, doxing is not a NAP violation. This doesn't mean groups shouldn't ban people for doing it. Also, doxing is not a NAP violation. Also, you don't get freedom by begging for it. Politics, you get freedom by taking it. Also, doxing is not a NAP violation. So, this is kind of the thing I was talking about earlier, where these people will get some clout in the party because there's, I don't know, clout to be had there, I suppose. And then they'll start trying to talk about philosophy without ever having studied any of it. They have a bumper sticker version of what the non-aggression principle is in their heads, and then they start blue check mark posting authoritatively about things that are very fundamental to libertarian ideas. In this case, doxing as a NAP violation. Let me start there. I'm pretty sure we don't disagree. Is there anybody on this video right now that thinks doxing is a non-aggression principle violation?
I've spent a lot of time. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how, just with even the most colloquial of definitions of the non-aggression principle, doxing could be a violation, and I can't come up with any. I'm trying really hard to steelman them, and I literally can't come up with anything that comes from the NAP. It seems like they're invoking the NAP with literally no connotation to it, but I'll pass.
It happens all the time. Go ahead, Shepard.
I just wanted to say, on behalf of other old people like me, doxing is when you out somebody's name and or their address and such, and give all kinds of personal information about them that you shouldn't. So now all of us boomers are all caught up. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it was good that you did that, because somebody in the comments just asked what doxing is. Doxing is when you drop someone's docs, which is docs meaning private documents, meaning maybe you release their driver's license number or their home address or their telephone number or their social security number, birth date, and other personal information. Like releasing quote unquote private information publicly is called doxing. This is an example of what I was ranting about earlier. We have somebody that calls himself a libertarian that feels that something shouldn't happen and that something is wrong, and therefore it's a NAP violation. And I suspect that they called it a NAP violation because that's probably the only way they have the quote-unquote authority in their New Hampshire Executive Committee to actually oust somebody, is if they violate the NAP or espouse violating the NAP. But yeah, I think this bears talking about. Doxing somebody, releasing private information, is not an aggression. Information is not property. And if anybody has any questions or disagreements on that, we can definitely get into it. But I just wanted to kind of plant that flag again. And if we need to digress into it, we can certainly do that. I tried to steelman it too. I tried, okay, what's the worst possible doxing that somebody could do? Well, let's say that there's somebody out there that's like really hated, like they're a bad person that, subjectively bad. You know, let's say they kick dogs all the time. Dogs that they own. They kick dogs all the time that they own. In my book, yeah, cover his ears. He's like, oh, pets, yes. And so like I rent a billboard that says so and so kicks dogs, with a picture of him kicking a dog. Here's his social security number. Did I steel man that very well? I don't think I did. But yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Christian.
Sorry, I don't want to like go too far off the rails, but what this almost seems like it's a larger conversation, like that people still. I shouldn't even say people. I should say the libertarians who aren't libertarians don't even really know what an aggression is. Like they have no consistent definition for an aggression. If you ask like capital L libertarians what an aggression is, they'll throw all sorts of weird things at you, like. Oh, well, noise. I've heard people claim noises are nap violations. Like, oh, their music is too loud. That's a nap violation because it affects my body. That's not what an aggression is. It's never been an aggression. It's not even an aggression under the colloquial term of an aggression. So it's like, I don't know why you're trying to co-opt things that I don't like into the word aggression, except for maybe you're just trying to control people. But I don't want to project too much there. I know that's really looking super far into it, but I feel like that's, from an ethical perspective, the state of nature is level one of understanding basically all of the philosophy behind it. But like, as far as applying it, if you don't know what an aggression is, you have no capacity to be a libertarian whatsoever. If you can't discern what is an aggression and what is not, you are completely incapable of interacting in society in a way that is libertarian. So I just wanted to get that out there. Sorry.
Yeah, so libertarianism as a principle requires an understanding of property, because you can't determine what is or isn't an aggression unless you have a conception of property, because an aggression is harm to property. So we're getting some comments here over on Odysee. Dog suddenly interested when the conversation moves to kicking dogs. Doggo suddenly left the room when the talk went to kicking dogs. Yeah. Mark says, so releasing public information, most of the things you listed, Patrick, are not private. Okay. Well, your social security number is usually considered private, but maybe like your dick length or your, I don't know, just anything private. You know what I mean by private. Well, information is not property. Go ahead, Christian.
I just want to make sure this is clear. If you look at in some states, because this does change from state to state, not to say that the legalese of it makes it a good definition, but in some states, the definition of doxing can even include things that you can look up in a phone book, like people's telephone numbers, or, for example, where they work. These are things that wouldn't be typically considered like confidential or private information, but could still be listed under doxing. So I just wanted to make sure. It covers a broad things. Essentially it's anything you don't want anybody else to know that someone leaks. That's how it's used. So
yeah. Okay. All right. So the last thing. Go ahead, Shepard.
Just a thought about the Libertarian Party. As a great gay Christian woman, I would like to say that it is unfair, or it is bad to claim a name that does not belong to you. And I kind of believe strongly in libertarianism. And for the Libertarian Party, they could have used the word Christian. They could have used the word Muslim. They could have used the word short or tall or something else. But they happen to choose a name that has a very specific meaning that I hold close to my heart. And I'm not gay, I'm not Christian, and I'm not a woman. I shouldn't use those terms. I have the common decency to give those terms to people who are those things. And it makes me a little bit of a jerk if I go around saying that I am, when in fact I'm not. So if they wanted to call themselves the pseudo-libertarian or occasionally libertarian or libertarian-ish or a bit more libertarian-ish, then that's all fair, because I do believe that the Libertarian Party in many ways is a bit more libertarian than some of the other political parties. But to claim such a pure, wonderful, beautiful name and defile it, that makes the Libertarian Party a little bit of a bitch.
Gary Johnson.
It reminds me of the meme, Mom, I want libertarianism. We have libertarianism at home. And then it's the Libertarian Party. You know, I mean, sorry, Shepard said it perfectly. I mean, we can fight over names all day, which is something that it gets very tiresome. But again, like if you can't even understand, if you are chair members or whatever they call themselves, regent lords of your local Libertarian Party, and you don't even know what an aggression is, like I can't take you seriously. I'm sorry. I can't.
Okay. So the last thing I want to preface, because we're about to talk about vaccine safety information. Kaysen and I have a rule for this platform that is we absolutely will not platform medical advice. Why? Because on either side, like we won't, I won't have guests on pro-vax or anti-vax. Why? Because I'm not an immunologist. I'm not a scientist. I can't filter the information, and I don't want to put out information that might cause people to take actions in their life or with their bodies that may lead them to harm. I don't want that on my conscience. And so as a rule, on all of my platforms, the only time you will see that type of content is in a debate format where I'll have an expert from both sides and I'll moderate, because debate is good. We want to find truth, but to do that, we need knowledgeable people we need minds to meet and clash and work together to find truth. So what I'm about to do is not medical advice, and I'm not saying that for any kind of stupid law or YouTube reason. I'm telling you, from me personally, look, anything you're about to see, don't change your behavior based on it. I think it's just interesting information that I'm about to show you. I did this randomly, and it was a little mind-blowing, and I wanted to share it. So I don't think I'm transgressing my rule here. I hope I'm not. But yeah, that is the caveat. Let us take a quick look at the National Vaccine Information Center. This is called the VAERS database. Anytime someone is injured or thinks that they have been injured by a vaccine, they report it to this governmental organization to get investigated. And if it's found that they were in fact injured in some way, they'll get a payout, paid for in part by tax money and paid for in part by the vaccine companies. And also paid for in part by fees added to the vaccines when you go to get vaccinated. Anyway, so this is a massive open to the public database of people that got injured. Now, I have not really talked about my vaccine status for the reasons I already mentioned, and I'm not going to do it now. But we have open access to this database, and I did a couple quick searches that I think are just really telling, and I want to share them. So I hope I'm not transgressing my rule here. So this is the search page. Okay, so I'm just going to show you very clearly what I'm going to search for, right? So we're going to we're going to give me a table by age. We're going to pick the COVID-19 vaccine, and we're going to pick died, yes. So all we're going to do is pull back all the numbers on people that had a case where they died from the COVID-19 vaccine. So I'm going to click Find now. Now, there's lots of considerations here that I'm not going to get into. It's dangerous to just willy-nilly wade into data without knowing where the data came from necessarily. But that number says 5,165.
I was about to ask you if that was a comma or a decimal, because
that's a comma. That's a comma. So I'm going to leave that tab open now. Now we're going to go back over to the search page. Now I'm going to pick all vaccines, and the only other thing I'm going to change is I'm going to open up the dates, and we're going to filter on date of death. And I'm going to scroll all the way down to 1968, the beginning of the database. And I'm going to scroll all the way up to 2019, before COVID. And I'm going to click Find. 5,549.
Holy cow. No,
So-
you didn't.
So,
Oh man.
I picked death because it is the most finite thing. Like, injury is kind of subjective. There's a lot of messiness maybe in that data, over-reporting maybe in that whatever. But look, if they're attributing a dead body to a vaccine, well, in a year, a little over a year, 5,165. In the entire history of the vaccine injury database, 5,549. Yeah.
Wow.
Thoughts, Shepard?
Did we talk earlier about the stink factor? This stinks. I smell something. Holy cow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's just, yeah. And as you say, like, we shouldn't do the medical thing. But I think that the way that we all come from this is a different perspective. Once you know something and you're really good at something, a realtor in Malibu, California, who's showing a beachfront house, do they stand in such a way that their client is looking toward them and the backdrop is the empty refrigerator space? Or do they stand so that the backdrop is the ocean with the crashing waves? Well, of course they stand with the backdrop being the ocean with the crashing waves. Realtors know this. This is what they do. Well, a person who doesn't know that realtors do this might just say, oh, wow, this house really has cool views. It's just fun talking to the realtor because it's really pretty behind him. But if you're a realtor and you see that, you say to yourself, maybe there's a reason that the realtor is positioning themselves in that way. And that's been my stink thing for the vaccine and the whole COVID thing has been, wait a minute, I kind of know a little bit about propaganda and crowd manipulation, etc. This stinks. And your numbers, your logic, the numbers that you just pulled up, my gosh, what a story they tell. I mean, that's a stink factor.
It's a little stinky. It's definitely a little stinky. Oh, in these comments, Remco on Odysee says, come on, it were mild cases of death. And James says, I need to get my mother-in-law that vaccine.
The women are loving James tonight, I bet.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, so Christian, you have any thoughts?
I have a question, and maybe you could clarify this for me. Is that deaths attributed to the vaccine, or is that claims that the death could be attributed to the vaccine? I think I'm not trying to be like the stick in the mud for all the fun, but I feel like that's a very important distinction.
That is an important
And if you don't have the information,
if you don't have, I'm going to tell you I don't know. So this could be invalid, right? Because the COVID and the vaccine is very popular. It's a big deal right now. So people are going to be looking for connections where they don't exist. And so, like, what I like to do is sort of I like to assume a 10x rule when I'm questioning data, right? So, like, if I look at let me do this and tabulate by
Yeah, that's fine. And while you're doing that, the reason that I asked the question, just for anybody who's curious, is just because if it isn't initially obvious, is just the fact that there can be a large discrepancy in the fact that this is a highly popularized event. Vaccine skepticism is much higher in the last decade than it has ever been. And these combination of social pressures can lead to a higher number of claims. So if it's direct attributions, that's one thing. That's an observation of reality that's been reaffirmed. That is something entirely different than claims, which can be modified or rather affected by a number of other factors. If I could talk today, sorry.
Yeah, that was a very good point, Christian.
The change I wanted to make to my search query, just so people can see what I'm doing, so they don't think I'm trying to hide or do anything shady. So I went to 2021. I selected the COVID vaccine, and now I'm going to show a table by year of death. Because the other thing I like to look at is like, let's say that Christian has a point, right? So like, maybe it's being vastly overreported right now. So I look at, like, here is by year. It looks like it averages between 150 to 250 vaccine deaths a year. Just from 2019 back to, let's say, 1991. That's a more than a 10x difference. That's a 20x difference. So like, even if I looked at the current numbers and I'm like, let's say it's half overreported. Well, that's still a 10x difference. So like, it like, do I think it's a 20 times overreporting? Maybe it is. Maybe there's some skew in the numbers that makes it 20x. And so the real answer at the end of the day is I don't know. And I think Shepard nailed it with his stink factor. It's stinky. And anyway, yeah, no medical advice, but it's stinky.
Yeah, I think I'm very skeptical of statistics, especially since I am aware of how easy it is to not only to misinterpret data on my own part, but to be given intentionally misinterpretable data. So I think, I'm not claiming anybody here is trying to do that, but I think I'm just eternally skeptical of statistics without fully knowing the methodology and stuff like that. But that's my own thing. I just wanted to bring it up just to see. But
that is super a valid point to put on. And there's some documentation on the site about how to interpret the data properly. All I would suggest
provided for free by Facebook fact checkers.
Yeah. All I would point out is that whatever control mechanisms they used to give an average of 150 to 250 per year is the same set of controls that they used that provided 5,000 for the past year and a half. So assuming that didn't change, there's definitely an anomaly there. It could be something about the reporting. It could be something about the vaccination. They're the vaccines. Anyway.
Something I wanted to bring up is you have had two people, I think on Anarchast, that you had a pro-vax, anti-vax debate, and they were both NA people. They weren't saying you should make other people have take a vaccine, but a pro and an anti. And in both cases, you had this brilliant, albeit unprofessionally presented, young man who is my new hero, who was the pro-vaccine guy. And then there were some loony bins that were the other people. I'm trying to make friends here today. And I really wish that there was a logic-based, science-based person who would say, you know what, I'm not going to use a single bit of anecdotal evidence during this whole debate. And I wish there was someone out there, because I am so strongly biased. I recognize it in myself. It's a weakness. I am biased against the man. And the man is telling me that I need to let some people squirt something that I don't know what it is into my body, and I need to bow and I need to kiss the ring. And I want good, solid, hard evidence against it. And I want somebody to come on there and kick that guy with his hair down on his face. Gosh, I love him to death, but I'm going to give him crap. I want somebody to kick his butt, and nobody can. He has defeated two top-level people that you've brought up against him, and he is just hands down won. And I want him defeated. I love the guy, but I want him defeated. And so then I have to get serious with myself and say, okay, as much as I want them facts to come out one way, I'm happy if they don't. Like, if there's something we can squirt into me that makes me not get sick or die, well, that's kind of a positive. I'll do that. But I've got to believe it.
Yeah. I also want to add that, I'll be the shill here. Vaccines have for centuries at this point, not centuries, a century and some change. Inoculations and vaccines have been used to prevent diseases effectively. If it wasn't for the polio vaccine, we'd still have polio in our kids today, and they would become polio adults, and if they made it that far. And smallpox is another great example. And it is very tempting, especially as someone who is against the state, such as myself, to get conspiratorial. Now, I'm not making a claim one way or another to the efficacy or to any sort of conspiratorial nature of the COVID-19 vaccine, but I do think it's important to be able to observe reality and know that there have been it is empirically impossible to make the claim that every vaccine has been ineffective or something to that extent. So let's, just try to approach it rationally, I guess, is all that I'm trying to get out of this. Not every vaccine ever has been. Yeah.
That is what I like to talk about here. Look, like this goes for everything, but also medical stuff and also everything. All of us are mostly rationally ignorant on most everything. And I don't just say ignorant, I say rationally ignorant, because we are ignorant of most things for good reason, because it is, number one, impossible for us to be ignorant on everything. It's impossible to know everything. It's impossible to have time to study everything and become experts in everything. We have to pick and choose what we're experts in. And for the things that we choose by inaction to not be experts in, we still need to make decisions in those areas sometimes. And a lot of people are like, #trust the science. And a lot of people are like, #never trust the science. It's in bed with government and polluted and perverted and whatever. Both of those positions are wrong. Trust yourself. Even if you look, the rational thing to do in areas where you are rationally ignorant is to go out looking for people that have done their homework on all sides, to compare notes between the two, and then make your own decision for yourself. Don't trust the #science. Don't trust the Fauci. Don't trust the scientists blindly, and don't trust the anti-scientists blindly. Look for all the information that you can get. Look at the opinions of all of the people that have done their homework, and then at the end of the day, it's you making the decision. Always make sure that it's you making the decision for yourself, in your own best rational self-interest. Don't blindly trust anybody, is what I'm trying to say. You need to lead yourself as the ball, or the square. It's not a ball, as the square says. You own yourself. You need to lead yourself. Any thoughts on that, guys?
I'll let Shepard go. Sorry.
Go ahead, Christian. Go ahead.
I did it again.
Okay. Again, I feel like this is something that I almost to an extent feel obligated to say. I would, in as many ways as possible, be as skeptical as possible of any sort of conspiratorial claim that I was to hold. I would almost probably hold it to some higher level of scrutiny than anything else I hold, because there are a lot of massive implications. For some reason, my ability to talk is leaving as I go through this conversation. But,
the dog left. We figured it out. The dog.
He's actually right down here.
It's like Samson's hair. Oh, okay.
Yeah. We've been inoculating and this is a terrible example because highly conspiratorial people will talk about this as one, but we've been inoculating against the flu for, let me check, probably close to 150 years at this point, give or take a decade. And again, I'm not making any claims about COVID-19 or some of the more recent vaccines or anything like that. I'm just saying that there do exist parts of science that have created vaccines that have shown empirically that they have been effective. Whether they are the entire reason that the disease was gone, whether it was whether general cleanliness and hygiene increasing also help with these things, I just wanted to get that out there. But,
okay, and the counterpoint is that there is actually real data on people that have been injured by them. So I think the rational position.
Yeah, no.
The rational position. I don't think anybody here will disagree with this. The rational position is that both things can be true at the same time. Vaccines can have people that are injured by them, and that can be real. And vaccines can also be effective to a certain amount of people. I think that's a rational position to hold.
Yeah, I'm specifically talking to the extreme. Like
Okay.
vaccines are designed to microchip you and to make you a brain bot for the government, and then you'll go hang yourself or something.
Okay.
Like the total conspiratorial extreme, which is something that I see, which is why I feel like it has to be pointed out. I'm not saying that there have been people that have been hurt by these vaccines. That has been empirically shown. I'm not making any medical advice. Do with that information what you will, but we're looking at observations of reality. We're not making any sort of value claims about these observations of reality, but just make sure your rationalizations are based on observations of reality. That's all I'm getting at.
Well, that's it. That's the perfect book into the conversation and brings it right back around to the standards discussion that we had, right? Like, what are your standards for figuring this out? Have you thought about what your standards should be for what you believe when you're making these decisions? Because that should be step one. You need to know what your standards are. Shepard, do you have any final thoughts?
I'm going to plug an article my mentor wrote, Life, Liberty, and Quackery from a Voluntarist Perspective. And I put a link in the tube of views. I put a link in there just now. It's at voluntarist.com. And Carl Watner says it better than I could. So that's all I got to say about that.
Okay. Christian, any last words?
No, I think it was a great conversation. I was glad to be here and to be a part of it.
All right, guys. Where can people find
thanks,
you?
guys. Y'all rock.
Christian, where can people find you?
Yeah, you guys can check me out over on Liberty After Dark. We have a YouTube channel. I'd prefer if you'd go over to Odysee and check us out there. It's just Liberty-After-Dark on Odysee. The whole name, you can also just search it like that. Go follow over there and keep up to date with the content. Plenty of stuff coming out soon. So,
all right, Shepard, where can people find you?
I'm Shepard the Voluntarist. I'm also openly voluntary. If you Google either of those, I'm on those. And I'm kind of like to echo what Christian said. Odysee is kind of it is the Google of what AOL used to be. Kind of like once there was YouTube, and now there's Odysee. Once there was Facebook, and now there's Float. So find me on any of those.
Oh, I almost forgot my announcement, and you just reminded me. I almost forgot about it. All right, so here's the big announcement. And this is pretty epic for everybody, I think, involved. Let me just make sure that I am allowed to say this. Okay, I've been told I can scream it from the rooftops. So that counts. I am joining Float, the company, as the Chief Technology Officer to make Float the best alternative to get away from Facebook and all of the other terrible social media companies. So I will be joining their company at that level to sort of make sure that their technology is as solid, uncensorable, and freedom-inducing as possible. I am so freaking excited for the opportunity. I started looking to sort of pick up my next venture a few months ago, and it was a depressing several weeks. It was me thinking about having to sort of put a lot of this stuff on hold and go back to like a normal life in the automotive or the power sports industry, and I just was not thrilled about that because, well, for many reasons. But there's pretty much a single position in the entire world where I could do what I do best, which is compete in the free market, live and breathe technology, solving technological problems, and work with fellow voluntarists that are principled people, and compete against Facebook, who banned me and called me a terrorist. So, I feel super lucky and thrilled to have the opportunity. And boy, am I ready! I'm ready to get in there and just kick so much ass and take it to the next level. And so that is the big announcement. What does that mean for Disenthrall and Anarchast. I honestly can't tell you yet. That will be the new big focus. So I'm going to do my best here on these platforms. But you know, that's what's happening in my life, and that's what's coming up. Yeah, so that's the big announcement. I just wanted to put that out there. I'm excited. So we'll see how it goes. Let me
Congratulations!
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Operation Kill Facebook has officially commenced.
Yes! Yes! Destroy!
I was motivated by a post that I saw on my Facebook page, which I still had, and it was somebody asking, give me one reason why I shouldn't delete my Facebook account. And I was like, I can't. Bye. And I got rid of my Facebook account. So it's gone. I'm float, and I browse Twitter for fun. So that's it.
There you go. Well, we have Float in the comments. What's up, Float? We have I'm watching Float chat as well. It's good to see you guys. I'm super pumped. My mom's in the comments. What's up, Mom? Everybody say hi to Cynthia. She is
Hi, Cynthia. Good to talk to you again.
Remka, it already started. I made the okay, Aaron. I know you're watching. It was like 10 seconds after the announcement, and somebody's like, "Will you finally bring us dark mode?" So now I get to receive that stuff too. Like I guess I did take that on, didn't I?
Yeah, and I don't like the color of the logo.
Yeah. Okay, so submit your issues now. Let's get into it for real. Yeah. We're
Seriously,
live streaming to Float
dark
right
mode?
now, for real. Seriously, dark mode. I don't know. I'm just starting. I'm just starting. I'm sure they're working on it.
I'm just giving you a hard time. Yeah.
That's crazy. All right, guys. Yeah, everybody saying hi to the mom. That's great. Okay, guys. I will end this stream there today. I hope you've enjoyed all the different topics that we did. If you want to support the channel, and I don't know even what that means right now because I'm not sure. Well, I'll just say if you like what you see and you want to see more of it, you're welcome to go to disenthrall.me/support, and I will see you guys next time. I almost said peace, love, and anarchy, but that's the Anarchast sign off. So what do I say on Disenthrall? Take it easy. All right, guys, take it easy.